Okay, tonight's true story comes to us from Josh, and it's about a classic haunting in the house that he grew up in. So, without further ado, I thought I would share some experiences I had when I was much younger in my childhood home. I was about 14, and at some point, my dad, who is a carpenter, decided to renovate our bedroom. In the months while he worked, my twin brother and I slept in the living room, taking turns sleeping on the couch and on the floor. One night, when I was sleeping on the floor, I suddenly woke up in the middle of the night and was just laying there when I heard a voice loudly whisper, "Josh!" I sat up assuming it was my brother, so I pushed him gently and asked, "What? What do you want?" He was snoring in a deep slumber, so I just laid back down. It took me a moment to realize that if he was asleep, he couldn't have been calling my name. As this realization settled in on me, from the hallway I heard another loud whisper say, "Come here." I was terrified and pulled the covers over my head. I started crying and didn't sleep until after the sun had come up. Another time, around the same age, we had gotten home from school and I was playing video games and he was laying on his bed. We were supposed to start our chores as soon as we got home, but our parents didn't come home for a few hours after us, so we would always relax for a bit and then start on chores before they got home. The bedroom doorway was behind me to my left, and just outside that door was the door to our bathroom. I was playing our GameCube when suddenly I saw a reflection in the glass cabinet doors of the entertainment center. A tall figure standing in the doorway. I thought my dad had come home early and began working up an excuse about how I'd forgotten to save my game the day before and needed to find a save point before the console overheated. I was turning around to face him as I was making this excuse, but when I turned around, I saw that it wasn't my dad at all, but a tall, human-shaped shadow in the doorway. My brother had also jumped out of bed when he heard me talking to what we thought was our dad, and we both stood and stared at the figure for a moment. It then slid into the bathroom. It didn't move its arms or legs. It just glided sideways until it disappeared into the bathroom, and the moment it did, the bathroom light came on. We both ran over and searched the bathroom but didn't find anything. So we bolted to the front of the house and called our mom in a panic. She had our uncle pick us up and we stayed at his house until she got off work and picked us up. This happened in the middle of the day with the house fully lit up. Each night we would turn that bathroom light off and the next morning it would be back on again. Just that once was the only time we ever saw the shadow person, though. Another occurrence that happened really often from elementary to middle school years for me was that I would wake up in the mornings and all my bedding, except the fitted sheet I was laying on, would be under the bed, pillows and all. I assumed that it had something to do with air circulation, so I never really thought anything of it at the time. It wasn't until I mentioned it to a group of friends how annoying it all was whenever it happened that they looked at me like I was crazy, and I realized that this wasn't a normal occurrence for anyone else. It never happened again, but the scariest part is sometimes I would wake up to the covers being pulled off of me, and I would literally struggle to pull them back and have a tug-of-war with whatever force was pulling them under the bed. It was definitely a strong force, but I had thought it was some kind of suction caused by the air circulation, though in hindsight that didn't make any sense. The tug-of-war is so weird to think about looking back now. I would literally wrestle it, finally pulling the blankets back onto the bed, wrap myself in them, and fall back asleep. I would be so annoyed. I was too confused to realize I probably should have been scared. We also had a lot of strange noises and bumps in the night. Broken bits of voices, phantom footsteps, doors opening or closing by themselves. There was a recurring event of loud footsteps like heavy boots stomping through the kitchen late at night. It seemed to be coming from the ceiling, but we didn't have an attic space. There was also a little boy people had seen. My older sister and dad both saw him before I was born, in the living room, impossibly peeking from behind the couch, even though the couch was up against the wall. One time, my older cousin saw him peeking at her from behind the recliner my mom was sitting in. She asked my mom if my brother and I had a friend over, and my mom informed her that we were staying at a friend's house. Upon learning this, my cousin promptly left. Another time, my twin brother had come running into our room freaking out, saying that he had been in the kitchen and had seen just the legs of a small child standing under the table. It was as if there was a child standing right where the table was, but there was nothing on or above the table. Things really quieted down over the years, but a few years ago, my mom told me that she was in the backyard gardening, and when she looked at the back door of the house, there was a little boy looking out of the screen door. He ran away and towards her bedroom. She said that she ran inside, and as she did, she heard a loud crash and thought that her dresser or large desk had fallen over or something. But when she went into her room, she didn't see anything disturbed. I personally never saw the boy and couldn't find any information about anything happening to a child into the house prior to my family living there. I have looked into the history of the property and past owners, but I couldn't find anything particularly tragic that happened at the house. Apparently, a guy in his early 20s did pass away in a car accident while living at the home, but the crash took place on the other side of town. I couldn't find anything related to the little boy. The only passing I know of occurring at the house for certain was my grandmother. She lived out her last few years at the house being cared for by my mother, who was a hospice nurse at the time. She was very cheerful and religious and was always singing gospel hymns. Things really calmed down when she moved in and after she passed. Some other stories would be, once my twin brother woke me up screaming and crying. He said that he was awakened by the feeling of somebody crawling around on the inside of his mattress. That part is what sent chills up my spine, y'all. That one really got me. Anyway, feeling someone crawling around on the inside of his mattress. We both ended up sleeping in the living room that night. Thankfully, I never experienced the same thing, but there were a handful of times when I could distinctly feel as something unseen sat down on the edge of my bed in the middle of the night. Another time, my brother and I were in our room after school, and I was trying to take a nap. Our door creaked open, and I heard footsteps approach my bed. My twin asked, "Did you just come in?" I said, "No." And he said, "Oh, well, whoever just walked to your bed, it wasn't anybody." And I just said, "Okay," and even eventually did take that nap. It was daytime, which was less scary, and whatever was in the house didn't feel scary most times. Another time that felt silly was my brother and I were awake late one night, and our bedroom door was open. Suddenly, a roll of toilet paper flew into our room, followed by a coat hanger, and finally a small cardboard box. We were laughing and went into the laundry room thinking it was our dad messing with us. He was a jokester, but when we got into the laundry room, no one was there. He couldn't have snuck away. Our house was old and all the floors and doors were loud and creaky, so we would have easily heard him. We went to the living room and discovered he was sound asleep on the couch. So we just went back to our room and closed the door. I'm in my early 30s now and have long since moved out of that house, but my mom and younger brother still live there. I grew up as the kid with the haunted house. friends and family would avoid coming over. I remember when I was young thinking that supernatural occurrences were just a normal thing. But I haven't experienced anything even slightly paranormal for years now. I have other stories, as well as stories from family members and friends of the family, that I wouldn't mind sharing if this was of interest to anyone. I'm also open to answer any questions. Wow, Josh, that was like the consummate textbook classic haunting. I don't think I don't think there was a box that wasn't checked there. Anyway, thank you for your story, Josh. Keep sending me your stories and suggestions, guys. That's been Jay's Haunted Appalachia for tonight. Keep Appalachia haunted, y'all.